Tammy, you got the thumbs up.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. I didn't see Natasha come in, sorry. All right. Good evening and welcome to tonight's board meeting. We have reason to go into executive session. Would somebody like to read that for me? Does anybody have it up? The reason we're going to executive session?
I do a roll call.
Roll call? Sorry.
That's okay. Mrs. Brinkman,
Present?
Mr. Rudy,
Present.
Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
5 present.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody have mine's not coming up.
Yep, I have it.
Thank you.
We withdraw to executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee. I move that we move to executive session for
Second.
those purposes.
Thank you. Roll call, Dan?
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes?
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved. We'll be back at 7 PM for our regular session meeting.
Sorry about that. I just.
please withdraw us from executive session, please?
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Brinkman,
Present?
Mr. Rudy. Present. Mr. Schaff,
Present.
Mrs. Delaney,
Present.
Mr. Chumley.
Present.
All present.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. Speaking at this evening's board meeting, we have a card from Mr. Ed McCoy. Please step up to the mic. State your address, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and please respect that we cannot use names or positions in the district to discuss personnel.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
My name is Ed McCoy. I live at 21 Bellwood Court. That's in Amelia. I would just like to speak about an email that I sent to the superintendent, and I copied the board members on July the 29th. And if you don't mind, I'm going to read that real quick. I only got 3 minutes, but it says, "It has been brought to my attention," can I take this off for this?
Absolutely.
It has been brought to my attention that there have been many instances where teachers are discussing personal political views with students. I searched the district website to see what the district policy is on this issue, but could not find the employee handbook. I'm curious as to what our district policy actually is. This November, along with all other elections, is very important, as we saw with the passing of the levy. Whether an educator leans left, right, or stands right in the middle, political views should be left at home. Kids look up to educators as supportive role models, but there have been certain volatile issues that the educators have no right to discuss, as their opinions may sway a student to think one way or another. I realize that political discussions have to happen in particular classes as part of the curriculum, but I think the focus should be on the education piece only, not personal opinions. If there is a policy regarding the discussing political views with the student body, I think this would be a great time to send a reminder to the educators of our district. If there's not a policy in place, the special board meeting that night would be the right time to bring up this subject for discussion with the board. I'm requesting a copy of the West Clermont Employee Handbook. Thank you. I appreciate your time and all you have taken to read the email. I'm looking forward to your response. That was very important to me because my daughter was approached and she felt very uncomfortable. So that's what got me even thinking about this. So then, in the meantime, I found out that there's other educators that are talking to students within the classroom and within settings that they shouldn't be. So I followed that email up with another email on August the 8th, 7th, I believe, 7th or 8th, I think it was the 8th, 7th. I didn't get a response from anybody, either one. This time I directed that to the board and I copied the superintendent, I believe. Still no response from anybody, okay? Go to find out, I did get a copy of the student or the employee handbook that went to my junk mail. I replied with another one, my third request to get someone to respond to me, and that was on September the 4th. And this was after the stuff happened in Milford with that teacher, and you all know what happened there. I don't think I need to explain that, right? So then it brings me to what happened this weekend, and I don't think I need to explain what's going on with a certain educator being staked at the cross
3 minutes.
over something that she had said, and she did nothing wrong with what she did because I could not find any policy that states she did anything wrong. I know she's a good educator. That's what people tell me. There's also people that tell me that she's very opinionated when it comes to politics. What I'm asking the board to do, and I've asked this many times through my emails, is I think our policy on this subject is weak when it comes to social issues within the classroom. I want to know what it is. There's a policy that states how they should be acting outside of the classroom, outside of the non-instructional piece of it, but there's nothing that says how a teacher or educator should be acting within the classroom and what they are not allowed to say. Are they allowed to speak on sex? Are they allowed to speak on religion? Are they allowed to speak on abortion? What are they allowed to say in the classroom? And I want to know, have they ever been told what they can and what they can't?
Okay. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate them. I'm going to let Mrs. Adams and possibly Mr. Romano follow up on that. I do want to read a prepared statement, if you don't mind. Administration was notified of a social media post published over the weekend by a teacher of the district. The post describes an event organized by individuals who support the President of the United States as a Hitler parade. The teacher's social media account was followed by parents, students, staff, and other members of the West Clermont Local School District community. Following this post, the district has received many complaints. As reflected in our board policies, we acknowledge the rights of our professional staff to speak on issues of public concern. However, we must balance those rights against the interests of the district and the efficient operations of our schools. We are currently investigating and assessing the facts and the law. While we investigate, the teacher at issue has been placed on administrative leave. In the interim, we wish to make clear that the views expressed in the aforementioned social media post do not represent those of the West Clermont Local School District.
Can I follow up?
30 seconds, please.
Okay, well, is there anybody else that wants to speak?
No.
Because if there's, I don't want to, but I just want to know, because when I looked through the employee handbook, I was looking for specific things, so I might have missed stuff. Is there a social policy on that?
We do have
When it comes-
policies, and I'll let Mrs. Adams and Mr. Romano
Okay.
follow up directly with you.
Okay, and like I said, I wish the board would have addressed this before it came to this,
Yep.
because it's an important election, and everybody knows that. And like I said in one of my emails, I don't think anybody wants me to tell my political or my social issues to their students and to their kids, and I think the parents of this district deserve that same respect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to treasurer's business, Mr. Romano.
Sure. Item 4.01 is a request for approval of minutes. Those are the minutes that were held for the meeting on August 17th as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion? Mr. Rudy?
Second.
Mr. Chumley? Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes. Thank
Motion
you.
approved.
Item 5.01 are the donations for the past couple of weeks. We have 3 of them. The first one is from the Adams Clermont Solid Waste District. They donated the following items to support the recycling program at the West Clermont Middle School: 20 medium baskets, 80 medium bins, 4 large cans with lids, and Rumpke donated 3 carts in partnership for that. Second donation for the West Clermont Middle School was an anonymous donation of $50 to be put towards student lunch fees. And the third donation was from Sophie Connolly. She donated $1,000 to purchase Chromebooks for students, for student use. And so those donations is recommended to approve those donations.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaff, and a second?
Second?
Mrs. Delaney? Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion
Thank
approved.
you. Item 5.02 is a resolution authorizing agreement with Play On Sports. Resolution, some information was provided to the board on this. Athletic Director James Collins provided us with some options to involve the community to remotely view these events, basically the events at the football stadium and at the gymnasium. take note that there is going to be a little bit delay, even though the agreement may be approved tonight. Could be up to 4 to 6 weeks. We're trying to accelerate that to about 3 to 4 weeks if we do the installation ourselves. I did talk with our internal people, and that can be done. So there's a lot of support inside to have this done. If we do the installation, the fee to have that installed would be waived too. So we'd have some savings there. It is a subscription service on the broadcasting, so there is a fee that comes with that, $70 per year, and then, or $11 per month, depending on the subscriber's request for it. So the request and the resolution is asking for authorization from the board for the superintendent and the treasurer to come to an agreement with Play On Sports for the school broadcast program at the high school stadium and gymnasium.
You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer, and I'll put that on the floor in the form of a motion and ask for a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy, discussion?
So, in the informational email you sent about this program, it was, I think I was unclear about the subscription type. This is something that people who want to watch the games would subscribe to for the $70 a year. And there was an option to either reduce that or so,
So there's two things. There's a cost to us to have the installation of the equipment,
right,
and they have the equipment available in the gymnasium. That is our cost to have that program. It is a 5-year agreement,
okay,
that they're asking us to sign. Okay, it is a subscription service from Play On Sports to the community. It allows them to see our games and any other game on that network that they have. So that cost to people who want to subscribe would be a $70 annual fee, and or if they want to do it monthly, $11 per month.
I see, okay. And there was no opportunity to reduce that fee or cost share the fee between the district and the community?
No, there is an option for us as we go forward if we want to share in that revenue
I see,
to it, but not in reducing the subscription fees.
okay. Because I remember they're saying about a sponsorship, the ability for sponsorship to capitalize, to reduce costs and to, I thought it said to help share in the subscription or so,
It's to help, so I think one of the things that you have to look at, because it's a 5-year agreement, is what impact does this have on the future once the vaccine is here and the restrictions are relieved? You're looking at a potential loss of revenue on the gate receipts, and so that's why there's that option there up the road, to share in that.
I understand, okay.
And could you express our appreciation to Mr. Collins for thinking outside the box? Somebody had brought that forward as wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And he's made that happen. And I think that even when COVID goes the right way, and we do have people coming back into the stadium, I still think that this is an opportunity maybe for our older generation to watch their grandkids. Maybe they live in Florida, they can't make it to the games, they can still watch it online. So I think that this is an ongoing thing that is going to be very favorable and well received by our community. $70 is not a whole lot of money, especially when it's a grandparent that can watch their grandchild.
Right.
So thank you, if you wouldn't mind expressing
We will
our
let him know
appreciation.
that.
Thank you.
I have an additional question to Mr. Romano. You had mentioned that, that you can view other institutions that are using the service. Do we know if any of the other schools that are within the ECC, which is our sports conference, are taking part in the Play On Sports, that we would be able to see possibly away games for the different?
Yes, there are. I do not have that list, but we can get that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just trying to be able to, to broaden,
Yeah.
if someone would want to, be a subscriber, that's not just going to be home games. And are we limited to just certain sports, or is it anything that's in the stadium and anything that's in the gymnasium? Or is it just football and basketball, or?
It is really, and as the contract reads, all athletic events that are in the stadium, so soccer would be included, any other event that's in there, if you do lacrosse during the spring or so, those are all included. And, for example, in the gymnasium, basketball, volleyball, there's wrestling matches in there, whatever sport is in there,
Okay.
they will do.
And this is only for athletic events, so not, I don't think it was last year. The year before, they brought in an outside, I think it was, if it was the boosters or the PTO, brought in an outside, the Wizards.
Wizards.
The Wizards, yes.
I mean, would something like that potentially be televisable, I guess? I mean, I don't,
Yet, I believe it is just, we'll double check all that, okay? I
just
believe it is
athletic,
just
that's
for the
not just
sports.
any event in
Yeah,
the,
correct.
okay, all right.
Anything further? Roll call?
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley.
Yes.
5 yes, thank you.
Motion approved.
Item 5.03 is an amendment to the appropriation measure. I think as you'll recall, as we begin the year, in June, there was an annual appropriation measure that was passed. As time goes on, we get more information specifically on the state and federal programs and the different grants. A lot of those grants are detailed out, submitted to the state, and then there's final approval. So we had some of those come back, and so there is an amendment to the appropriation measure. The detail is in the resolution. It is recommended to approve the supplementing and amending annual appropriations for FY '21 as presented.
Any further recommendation of the treasurer? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Got a second?
Second?
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Schaff,
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney,
Yes.
Mr. Chumley,
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy.
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. And item 5.04 is resolution authorizing, a resolution establishing the insurance premium rates for for 2021. Those are the rates that would go into effect on January 1st for our employee health program. Early on, the estimates for that, this was back in the spring, is that the rates would go up about 7%. Actually, it was higher than that, and I believe in May and June in the 5-year forecast. It was re-estimated at 7%. The actual increase is only 4.67. I say only, but it is an increase to us. So there are some savings in our forecast with that. We will follow through, have meetings with the insurance committee that is scheduled for this week to review those two. But the resolution is a recommendation to improve the establishing of the insurance premium rates for health, prescription, and dental benefits for 2021.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation of the treasurer. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, in a second?
Second.
Mr. Chumley. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you. And 5.05 is treasurer's comments. Just a couple things coming up. First of all, the August financial report will be in the September 28th meeting. One of the items in that report, we did get our real estate settlement in August, and so we'll do a reconciliation of that compared to what was estimated back in June in the 5-year forecast. Recall that although the levy passed this year, the first collection is until January, so we're really collecting the same amount of real estate revenue we have in the past to do that. With the superintendent, we're going to request a finance committee meeting within the next week or two, sometime prior to the September 28th. The 3 major items on that agenda, we'll be starting to look at updating the 5-year forecast. As you'll recall, that's been extended, the update, till the end of November, so we want to start working on that. Secondly, with that forecast, we need to start breaking that down to a monthly cash flow. I think as identified earlier in May and June, and then kind of reaffirmed in July, that there may be a necessity or a need to do a short-term borrowing for that low cash flow point that occurs in December, January. I know that hasn't happened for quite a while, but again, the additional levy money won't come in till January and forward, so we may have to do a short-term borrowing at that time. We'll know for certain within the next couple of weeks. And lastly, we're going to start discussions in preparing for the 21-22 budget. I know that seems like that's a far way off, but we want to start looking at three things. One is a timeline. Two is what process that we want to use to create that budget. And third, how we want to make sure that that ties with our strategic initiatives and strategic direction as we go forward. So we'll be reviewing that at the Finance Committee meeting. We also have scheduled this week, as I mentioned, the District Health Insurance Committee. That is scheduled for Wednesday. And as you might recall, that's a 9-member committee made up of 3 people from the WCEA, from HOPE, 3 people from HOPE, and 3 people from the administration. Our plan with that, and we did discuss this with representatives of both of those, is to have that first meeting look kind of like an organizational meeting, creating an agenda for us as we go forward within this coming year.
Great. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Anything else?
Yes, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Superintendent's business. David's going to.
Good evening, members of the board, Mrs. Adams, Mr. Romano. In front of you is the personnel agenda for September 14th, 2020. It's a rather large agenda with a large stipend list as well. I want to start off by saying on the agenda we have the retirement of Debbie Von Lordy from the Treasurer's Office, who's been with us for almost 20 years. So she'll be retiring at the end. Actually, it'll be, Mr. Romano, at the end of the year.
Correct.
She'll be at the end of the year. We also announced the retirement of Joan Steer from West Clermont High School, and she's had 18 years of service with us, and that'll also be at the end of the year. With that, as well as the resignation of 3 paraprofessional aides, cafeteria worker, and clinic assistant. We also have on the agenda the proposed hiring of a science teacher for West Clermont Middle School. The agenda also includes proposed approval for 2 health clinic assistants for the district support, a custodian, 2 full-time paraprofessional aides, 5 part-time paraprofessional aides, and a high school campus coordinator. You'll see on page 2, the agenda displays the notice of transfer of Karen Anderkin to the high school attendance secretary position. On the next page after that, you will see the agenda to include proposed approvals for supplemental contracts, and there is, I think, 3 or 4 pages of that. Roughly, they're instructional leaders for the year, club leaders, district committees like LPDC and master teacher, parking lot monitors, Saturday school workers, substitute custodians. There's 7 student teachers on there. We're still working with our colleges and universities to help student teachers get through their final placements. You'll also see attached is a stipend list, and in that stipend list, you'll see teachers that are teaching College Credit Plus in our schools, mentor teachers, teachers who have attended letters training, district support, and WCOA support stipends. I respectfully request that you approve the personnel agenda as submitted.
You have heard the recommendation of Dr. Foltz. Do we have a motion? Mr. Chumley? And a
Second.
Mr.
Second.
Scheck? Discussion?
Mr. Romano, would you please give my congratulations to Mrs. Von Lordy and appreciation for everything she's done. She took good care of me as an employee, and she's a good person, a good friend. And could you, Mrs. Adams, let Mrs. Steer know how much she's been appreciated? These are 2 big losses to the district, in my opinion. 2 great employees that have really gone above and beyond the call of duty.
I had a question regarding the stipends. Our community probably would be interested in the response. We have teacher leaders, and some are paid one rate, and others are paid at a different rate. Could you speak to the variations?
Yes. So the rate variation is dependent upon how many teachers that they help lead. So it's broken up to 4, then 5 to 9, and then 10 plus. So however many teachers that they're supporting as that leader, it works into how much money they would make then in that process. So that's why there's a difference there.
Thank you. Anything further? Roll call?
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes?
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
5 yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the resolution establishing building hours for elementary secretarial assistants. If you've been in West Clermont for very long, especially at the elementary level, you hear them commonly referred to as 600-hour employees. And what that means is we have provided 600 hours worth of service for elementary front office personnel. So we have one building administrative assistant, and then we allocated 600 hours to support in that. Well, given the current climate, when all the need for help in the front office with the pandemic and a variety of other things, we were able to increase that to 775 hours. So instead of calling them a 600-hour, which is commonly called, they're really elementary administrative assistants or secretary assistants. And that equates to a little less, about 19.5 hours a week. And with that help, that'll help us cover the phone, that'll help us with attendance, that'll help us cover the clinic, certainly the COVID clinic as well. So that's much needed support that we can offer the elementary level upon your approval of the resolution. So I respectfully submit that you approve the resolution as submitted.
You've heard the recommendation of Dr. Foltz. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, in a second.
Second?
Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Thank you.
Item 6.03 is the resolution to approve the remote learning plan. And this was required this year in the state of Ohio to get this kind of designation so that we would be able to offer our online school. So as you read through the details, you see it talks about how we will instruct, how we will assess, how we will record attendance, and how we'll support students from an equity standpoint. All those details are included in that, as well as the professional development overview. So we ask that you recommend that you approve this plan as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Schaff, and seconded by Mrs. Delaney. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
5 yes.
motion approved.
Item 6.04 is the third reading of the revised policy related to face coverings. We brought this to you in August, and in between there was a new mandate out from the state. And so we've updated and revised our policy to reflect those mandates from the state. And just as a side note, this is going on very, very well in our school district. You know, there's a lot of angst about it, a lot of discussion about mask wearing, and I'm really proud of our students and our staff in this. So I would ask that you approve the revised policy 8450.01, protective facial coverings during pandemic or epidemic events, be approved as presented.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Chumley, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Rudy. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
5 yes.
motion approved.
Item 6.05 is the West Clermont School District Reentry Planning Update. So I know that, Mr. Romano, will you get that up for me?
I can.
I'll start with, as he's getting that ready, the working assumptions, because this is important as we went into planning for the school year. We knew that there wouldn't be a vaccine for the coronavirus before school was scheduled to begin. We knew that we were faced as a board with this conflict between the pandemic as a health crisis, as well as the need for children to be in school. So it was important for us to make that our number one effort to get kids back face to face. That coming back to school, and everyone's finding this, that as we know them academically as well as operationally are different, and we're still like learning and adapting and adjusting. But it is our commitment to continue to have responsive plans that focus on health and safety of our students, first and foremost. Do I need to do something? Oh, thank you, sir, very much. And that it is likely that our guidelines will change throughout the year. And we found that already. We haven't changed major policy in working with our students, but we've had to tweak processes. just as we work through and problem solve. We need to remind all the students and the staff and the parents to be prepared to move to different plans. You might have noticed there are local school districts that had to close down for a day or two for contact tracing. And it all just depends on when we find out about the cases. And so it could be very likely that we move to remote learning on a dime. And we need everyone to be prepared to move in and out of these plans as needed. Obviously, there's a financial impact to changing how you academically serve students and how you operate. And so as we work through the financial committee and as we bring more forward to you here in the month of later in September and October, you'll realize some of those impacts. And we truly believe we're better together. And I couldn't be more proud of our students and our staff and how they've returned to school and how parents and how they've supported us. So our return to school plan, has been focused on all-in face-to-face instruction. And what it's boiled down to is about 25% of our students are in the online academy. And so although we're still working through some details of some people who want in or want out, and we're trying to get that all lined up to best serve students, this was a horrendous, humongous undertaking. It's not normal that you would start a school inside of a school within a 3 to 4 week period of time. And so it's been a very heavy lift and something that we thought was important to offer to our students, but it's not without daily challenge. And Mr. Overby will talk a little bit more about that later. I wanted you to see happy faces. And so here you see our creative band director, social distancing the band, our students being able to, enjoy their lunch in the cafeteria by spreading out. And the picture there in the front is our seniors. It was how they greeted the school year. It was a special event that they had on the football field. And so this is why we're here. And these students were just so incredibly happy to be back to school. And it was such a good feeling to be a part of that first day especially. We live by these stop the spread health and safety protocols. It's just, we talked about them, and now we're living them. And because of our successful reentry and our ability to stay in, we feel like they really do make a difference. And so that parent part of doing the symptoms check before school is vital. And our kids have, whenever, I believe strongly that when you set a high bar for students, they will meet you where you set that bar. And our kids have just done a great job. Now, keeping everyone's stamina and focus on this as the year goes on, I think will get more challenging. But I couldn't ask for anything more at this point. I want to talk a little bit about the positive case communication and the things that we do. First of all, whenever there's a case in a building, we send a letter to inform the entire school that there's a case in that school. And so that's number one. Number two, there's a letter that says you may be your child or you might be contacted because maybe you were sitting on the bus near a student. Or maybe you're in a classroom with a student, like you're in the same grade level or the same class, or you're with them at lunch. So you get a more targeted letter. So that's a second letter that goes out with every case. And then there's a third letter. Once we investigate and we define who those students are who are in close contact with a COVID case, then you get another letter for those students that then gives specific directions on what quarantining means and what's expected. And so what's going to be new starting, it was going to start today, we're just not quite ready, so it'll be likely tomorrow. We're going to create a dashboard that will be available on our website so that every week you'll be able to see the weekly totals, starting with the data from last week that give the overview. And so for us, this district dashboard on here, this is just a sample. This is not accurate. And I don't have all the quarantine numbers because and I'll explain that in just a second, but we've had 2 students and 3 staff overall since school started on the 31st. And we want to be able to kind of show that to people on a dashboard kind of view. What gets complicated is it's the revolving nature of it. And so we are trying to make sure that our numbers are clear when we present them. For example, you could be on quarantine, one day in 1 week, and you would still be on quarantine the next. So do you count that kid every day? Do you count them as once? When do they start? When do they end? It's a moving target. And so we want to make sure that the data that we share is clear to people, and that when you see huge quarantine numbers, it doesn't necessarily mean there's a big breakout here. It could mean there's some cases here, but it also could mean that people are self-quarantining because they visited a state with a high density of COVID. Or it could mean that they're being cautious because of a family member. And so those numbers will look bigger, and they do look bigger, but it's not necessarily all related to a specific case here in the district. And because it's just harder to count those kids separately because of the coming and going of the quarantine and how it's rolling. So it's just, we want to make the data as clean as possible because it's not simple. That's what I want to point out to you. We think this communication is pretty effective. We're trying really hard now to make sure that parents understand the 3 different levels so that the minute they hear about a case, they don't have a knee-jerk reaction and like keep their kids at home. Because we will let people know if it's in a close contact. You guys have questions about that before I move on? Okay. As you know, as part of our flex model plan, we do have a 50% capacity plan that Ellie is actually going to talk about. In comes Ellie. Ellie Preston, our leading coordinator here, our CLO, Chief Learning Officer, will share with us a little bit about the flex model 50% capacity plan, as well as we keep talking about remote learning 2.0, and we're saying it's not going to be like it was in the spring, and so she's going to put some definition around what that really means.
Good evening. Just let me know if I need to speak up through the mask here. So as Mrs. Adams has mentioned, we have, as part of our return to school plan, we have scenarios within our face-to-face return that, sorry, my son is trying to FaceTime me right now. I just got text messages, where are you? So, sorry about that. And so one of those options could potentially be a 50% capacity plan, where for whatever reason, whether it's because we needed to increase the amount of distance between students, primarily for that reason, that we may need to move to that plan. So at the elementary level, students have been assigned to cohorts. Those cohorts have already been communicated to families, so they know whether their student would be part of cohort 1 or cohort 2. Cohort 1, students would attend school on Mondays and Tuesdays. Cohort 2, students would attend school on Thursdays and Fridays. And Wednesdays would be those days set aside for students to be able to meet with small groups of students, to be able to preview any remote learning that students would be participating in the days that they aren't attending face-to-face, or to review for those students who were just with them face-to-face to set them up and on their path for the remote learning that they'd be engaging in on the days that they wouldn't be in attendance. It would be days, time set aside for teachers to collaborate, teachers to design instructional lessons, plans, etc. And that would be a consistent plan that we would follow the entire time that we would be in this 50% capacity. It's also important to note that we've been proactively working to identify students for whom, if we did move to that model, they may benefit for academic purposes and academic reasons for attending school beyond the 2 days that they were originally assigned. So that may be a student who, as part of their IEP goals, needs to have some additional face-to-face time that those goals would not be able to be successfully met, remotely. It could be students who have, who are English learners, who may have a reading improvement and monitoring plan, or, other academic reasons. And we've been proactively working with families to kind of communicate those things ahead of time so that everybody would know kind of what the plan that we would activate would be in case that scenario we were faced with school in that way. At the secondary level, it looks a little different in that the kind of go-to plan is that students would participate in remote learning 2.0 from school. So there wouldn't be a default where students would be attending, 2 days a week and then participating in remote learning the other days. It would be more of a parent opt-in model, thinking that, there may be cases where older students would need to be home with their younger siblings, other reasons why it might make sense for students to be at home participating in remote learning. But parents would have the opportunity to opt in to a cohort attendance. And that the middle school and the high school have been working to create parameters for what that would look like. So at the high school, for example, they would be following an alphabetical model where if you, if you were interested in opting in, students with the last names, A through L would attend on, certain days and the rest of the alphabet on another day. We would still remain consistent with that Wednesday being a day that only students who had defined academic needs could potentially come on those days, because we are, again, wanting and needing to set aside some of that time for instructional planning, for collaboration, for working with students in small groups, et cetera. As it relates to a remote learning 2.0, so just like in the spring where we had, all of our students unable to attend school face-to-face, we've also prepared for what, and we keep calling it remote learning 2.0 because it is like the new and enhanced version of remote learning and not just repeating what happened in the spring. So at both the elementary and secondary level, there would be the expectation that students would be attending regularly, that they'd be engaging in learning, that they'd be connecting with their teachers on a daily basis. And this would be true whether we had a short-term remote learning, so let's say we had to close a building for a few days in order to contact trace and to deep clean the facility. So it would be true in a short-term remote learning situation, as well as if that were longer term. At both the elementary and the secondary, there would be a set schedule that students would be expected to follow on a daily basis. It looks a little different at the elementary versus the middle school and the high school in terms of what that set schedule would look like. So for instance, at the high school where there's a bell schedule that students follow, first bell, second bell, and so on, high school students would follow that traditional bell schedule, and elementary students would follow a schedule that mirrors more of what their learning experiences are on a daily basis. So for instance, at the elementary level, there would be a morning check-in that would be required of all students. That would be the way that teachers would be able to ensure connection with all students. They then also would have, depending on whether they're a self-contained classroom or if they're grade level, where they have, an ELA teacher and a math and science teacher and a social studies teacher, then there would be a set schedule for them to be able to connect with each of those teachers. The same would be true with the middle school, where their schedule doesn't exactly reflect a bell schedule at the middle school, where we have where we've created teams for sixth grade, and then for seventh and eighth grade, their schedule would follow that similar schedule. But primarily the major difference is there really is that daily accountability for attendance, for work completion, as well as just that social emotional check-in to really be able to ensure that students are with us and that we have the opportunity to stay connected with them. We would follow that same schedule Monday through Thursday, and in this case, we'd want to reserve Friday as a day for professional learning collaboration, ensuring that teachers have time to plan for, the instruction that would continue to be provided for students. Again, just as in the hybrid plan, there will be situations where, as part of our proactive planning, we've identified that there are some students for whom delivering specially designed instruction, as an example, can't really happen in a remote setting. And that in those cases, we'd be working to identify those students and kind of establish a schedule. So if you think similar to like a clinical model, so if you're a student who requires physical therapy or occupational therapy as part of your IEP, we would schedule those things similar to like, a doctor's visit, where on, Tuesday at this time, that would be the time that you would come. We're trying to think about it, and we're planning for half-day increments of time just to coordinate those efforts a little bit more easily and to have some consistency for a student experience. So that's how that's working. With both our blended or our 50% capacity as well as our remote 2.0, one of the other make significant differences from our remote learning 1.0 are the parameters that we've established that provide for additional consistency across our grade levels. So all of our teachers in grades K through 12 are utilizing Schoology as our primary learning management system and our communication portal, where we've gone so far as to establish a universal agenda template that is organized in the same way, whether you're an elementary student, a middle school student, or high school student, where it contains the same information about learning expectations, links to a weekly folder that outlines daily lessons, where it takes out the challenges of navigating, like where do I find my stuff, where do I click, how do I, the initial, because in many cases, many of our students and in some cases teachers and for sure parents, it was the first time that they, especially at our elementary level, had ever really navigated a learning management system before. And so trying to cut down on the amount of time to find the stuff and be able to really harness more teacher time, more parent and student support around learning. So we've established those consistent expectations. Our teachers are already utilizing that format now. Part of what we've experienced as students have needed to be quarantined, we want their learning content to continue, for them to have the opportunity to not just for the next 14 days, not be able to participating in meaningful learning experiences. So already our teachers are utilizing that format and that structure so that students can continue to remain engaged even if they have to, be home and unavailable to attend face-to-face. So, it takes some initial, and especially when, you may not have students who've been quarantined and we're still face-to-face, there's a little bit of why are we doing this? But it's become quickly apparent for those who have to really understand the why, and it really will set us up to be successful if we do need to transition to either of these plans, but frankly, just to have a more consistent and uniform way of being able to share meaningful learning experiences with students and families.
I want to talk about the technology as a linchpin here and some of our challenges.
Yes. So, I'm, not just our district, but we've been very challenged by, with our students not having access to technology, the best laid plans, and it's one of those things where you can't even believe that it's really happening, but it happens when, your computers that are being produced and shipped to you all of a sudden, because of reasons outside of any of our control that have to do with, all sorts of political and global socioeconomic events that I'm not, for sure in the know of, mean that we didn't get our shipment of computers that we were supposed to have. So currently that means that, as of today, we were able to, in a few buildings, I believe Amelia and Holly Hill, our kindergarten and first grade students were able to get their devices, and Larry Parise and his technology team they've been working tirelessly to borrow devices from places, to Frankenstein any device that we could possibly find parts and pieces to put together a plan that will allow us, even though we're still awaiting the shipment, to still be able to provide a device for every elementary student. So we have limits even to their capabilities. So right now we're trying to work through the fact that these devices don't meet the minimum specifications for us to administer required testing, diagnostic testing for our students. So we're having to make plan B and C and D and E and so on for that. And for sure it's been a challenge as we've tried to prepare students for a transition to a 50% capacity or remote learning, as they've not had devices. So we're very much looking forward to that coming to fruition. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks we'll be able to, by the end of next week, have just squeaked out enough devices to hopefully, fingers crossed, have enough for every student, but we just kind of have to, I think, wait and see how, as that deployment pans out. So that's for sure been a real challenge, and, will continue to be a challenge. And some of the things that we're also looking at are ways that we can get creative about continuing to provide those learning opportunities for students when they're not with us face-to-face. And so looking at what would it take for us to be able to outfit a classroom in such a way that a student wouldn't just go on Schoology and, find some static resources, but would be able to engage in, instruction that's being provided live in the classroom. What might that look like? How can we continue to blur the lines between, students having to attend in order to engage as fully as possible, and be able to do that in different times and spaces. So we have some models for that. The Sandy Lemick, who received the award from Honored for being able to have her student with medical needs, participate successfully in class. That's one model, but there are for sure other models, and that's part of what we're really trying to learn about now, because I think in the future there's real possibility and real power in being able to continue to reimagine what a modern classroom and what a classroom, of the phrase 21st century is super, silly to say, but to really be able to define modern learning and what that means for how we need to equip and outfit our classroom. So that's also part of what we're taking this opportunity to really learn more about, and to be able to define and be able to share information with you about what that could look like and the power that that could provide for our students here in the district.
Do you guys have questions? Because I have, Mr. Perry's going to come in and speak too, so I want to give you a chance while Ellie is in here if you have questions about the learning aspects.
I had a question regarding, you said that if we went to a flexible plan where the students would be at home instruction until they came back, you said that there would be tighter guidelines where the students would have to log in the morning and check in, basically. What happens when you've got a family, we have this frequently in the spring, you have a family that maybe has 4 children, and they have internet access, but not the bandwidth that would support 4 of them being on at the same time. What accommodations are we putting in place to accommodate situations like that?
Yeah, so I think part of our challenge first is really understanding some of those challenges. And so, that's part of what I think that, our goal would be to have open lines of communication like that. Because I think what we have to try to balance is our desire to not have any student fall, between the cracks, and for us to completely become unengaged with them, especially if we're talking about an extended period of time, but also balancing the fact that clearly, I have 4 children in my own home, and they don't all have, their own device, and, needing to ensure opportunities for connection without having it become something that becomes unworkable and unrealistic and, challenge after challenge after challenge. So I think in those situations, what we've tried to do, and especially it becomes a little more challenging at the high school, because it does kind of require this beginning of the bell check-in just to see you're there. But it's not at all our expectation that students would be online from sun up to sundown, but that we would establish those routine check-in times and then be able to have both online and offline learning experiences. So it could be hey, I'm going to be on this Google Meet for the entire duration of our bell. So if you need to jump on and ask questions, feel free to do so. I'll know you're there. But then what you need to be working on. So carry on and work on it. So things like that, where we can still ensure check-in, but in a more flexible, period of time. Those are some of the things that we would be doing, as well as just keeping track of progress that students are making. So we've been working to establish, both for our WCOA students as well as for students who may need to participate in remote learning, a consistent way to track student engagement as well as student progress. So, just looking for hey, you might have missed this Google Meet, but I can see that you're on track, you're submitting work, to worry less about those students and those situations, as opposed to, students that we've not seen or heard from. They're not doing any work that we'd really want to dig deeper and troubleshoot. So I think it's through structures like that we can help find a balance between our desire to ensure that we are accountable for all students and a family's real, struggles around just trying to make it all work at home as well. And it would be, I know that Larry and he's been able to write grants and have access to, tools that we may be able to have families access. But all of that is part of a much larger plan around, ensuring equity as much as possible. But that's, it continues to be a struggle, not just for us, but for lots of families.
Thank you.
So,
And then I know one of our technology issues was the actual physical computers themselves, and one of our plans was to see if people would supply their own. Have we had any kind of response, or what kind of response have we had where people are integrating their own devices to help alleviate our?
well, as it relates to WCOA, families did have the opportunity to use their own device or
that's
to
a
request
okay.
a district device,
All right.
assuming that their device met certain basic specifications. So that's one way that we've worked to, offset that. I think the challenge around face-to-face is it's really challenging to provide high-quality support when you're dealing with potentially, a million different versions of a device. And so we've chosen to try to stick with the model of a district-supplied device, and just as a way of maximizing our support and the ease for students and for teachers. You can, as a Chromebook can be more easily managed at the district level if we're all dealing with the same device. So that's kind of the way that we opted for our face-to-face students at this time. Everything in the future, who's to say, but we feel like that was the plan to best set us up for success.
Thank you.
Anyone
Thank
else?
you. Thanks for your questions, because it really does speak to that wanting to have a rigorous, specific plan that we can communicate and yet be realistic about what each family situation is. And we learned a lot about families in the spring, sometimes too much information, but know that everybody kind of has their story, and we try to empathize with that and support it to the best way possible. So, Mr. Perry, do you see him? Mr. Perry's going to come in to talk a little bit about the facilities and operations plan, and then if he doesn't show up quickly, I'll just keep talking, and I'll do it for him. Okay. But what is really impressive during this time from the spring till now is just really our partnerships that we get to make based on who we're working with, either whether, come on up, Lance, I'm just talking for you. The health department has just been amazing, and we'll be working with the Board of Elections that he's going to talk to you about. And so we just wanted to bring you into the loop. When we talk about academically things are changing, operationally things are changing, Lance is going to paint a little bit of a picture of some of the things that we're addressing that I think will be important for the community to know. So thank you.
Madam President, Board of Education, good evening. So as Natasha said, just a quick update on a couple things COVID related to facilities. So I'll start off with the facility rental process. This is an ongoing kind of having to keep an eye on a lot of different moving parts to make sure we're in compliance in reference to facility rental. If you recall, over the summer, we actually did not have any facility rental because there were just too many guidelines. Then as that opened up, we've opened up to the community. Most recently, those guidelines include the following: that any group that is applying to use the facilities must have a written operations plan that is either worked with or approved by the Clermont County Public Health. This written plan must show enforcing and compliance of all of the orders, and also they must have a designated individual for compliance, and their contact information must be provided to the district. In addition to that, the district also has a level of responsibility for compliance. So the goal is that we would work directly with that point of contact together so that we're kind of working on the same solutions together. Most recently, on some active questions from some community members attempting to rent the facilities, we did run into building-specific questions. More specifically in regards to gymnasiums. Some of our gymnasiums are actually being used as overflow space for lunch. So therefore, those spaces, depending upon the building, they will deny those, the use of those gymnasiums while they are being used in that capacity. But that is not all of the elementary schools in particular. So we do have some that are available, but that is going to be based on a case-by-case basis. So we're working with groups actively. We have one church in particular that is currently very active with Clermont County Public Health, and we're working with them, making sure if we are able to, we're trying to fit everybody's need with each request. The second topic would be the election, Board of Elections. I met with 2 representatives on this past Friday. We discussed West Clermont and our schools, our polling places for many jurisdictions, I forget what they call them. Precincts, thank you. Many other precincts. We were talking about with all of the changes in closing down buildings and opening up buildings and all that juggling, that it's been quite difficult. They also told us that they've been under a certain amount of stress due to COVID, that some of the businesses that were more flexible about being available have turned them down. We took this opportunity to actually offer the middle school gymnasium, which is on the end, the 6th grade middle school that's right there against the road. Walked them through that space on Friday. That has not been a polling place. It will be moving into the future. They said they would have 2 precincts in there, and they may look at putting more because it's such a nice, large space. Best part about that is we are able to cut that area off from the rest of the building. I know the spring election sometimes can have some security concerns, but we feel very good about the fact that we'll be able to have adequate security within the facility, including access to private restrooms for them and ADA compliance for that space. So they were very pleased to have that available to them, unlike in the past. In addition to that, we also went to Clough Pike and walked the new gymnasium, which they did not realize was part of the renovation. So it was great news. The way that gymnasium is set up, again, it's ADA compliant, easy access, and also it has direct access from the parking lot. So we should be able to set up staff parking for the day of any election to be able to accommodate that need. And again, they were very pleased with what will be available to them that 1 year ago was not. So we left that meeting. They felt great about things. I felt great about things. And it seemed nice that we were able to be a solution in a time of need for them. So with those 2 items, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a good
Mr. Overby's going to come up to talk about our progress with the West Clermont Online Academy, where we are and where we're going. As mentioned before, this has been an amazing effort on so many people's parts, and we're just thankful for the dedication to offering this awesome continuum of service for our students.
Good evening. As Mrs. Adams was talking about, we have enrolled over 1,900 students into the online academy to start the school year, so that's a success in itself to really ramp up a whole new learning model basically since about August 1st. So we were able to connect with about 1,900 students and families. Our staff is continuing to learn, grow, stretch themselves in many different ways, from technology to curriculum to problem solving with parents and students. I would say that a majority of our families have been connected with and continue to be in part of Google Meets, small group, large group settings, and during PAC, during advisory time, or in the elementary, a much smaller group. We continue to solve micro and some macro issues that are continuing to pop up that I'll talk to you about in a minute. I do have to say that the technology team and our tech support has really taken on a lot of, and has had positive experience with lots of families. So thank you to Mr. Priest and his group for the work that they have done to get devices in many of our students' hands, but at the same time, troubleshoot and problem solve within our Chromebooks, but also within our Buzz Accelerated Education Learning Platform. We are just finished up, I think, week 3, and some challenges still exist that we're trying to work through as quickly as possible. Parent tech support, especially at the younger grades, continue to help our parents. It's a little different than Schoology, uploading assignments and things like that, helping them understand how to help their students turn in the work that they need to turn in. As Mrs. Preston was saying, as I was listening outside, we do have some families that are using personal devices, and you have a wide range of what those personal devices are, along with our Chromebooks. So just helping them know the difference of, if they're using let's say, a PC or a Mac or, some device like that. And for some families, we have said, just come get one of our devices. It will make it much easier, so continue to do that as well. We're continuing to develop the internal structure that we need to be successful. We quickly learned that we need to have a more robust system within the district to help support our families with the curriculum side of things, the technology side, but also just the questions that come up around yearbooks and pictures and all of those things that exist there. It is a challenge, to be honest with you, to start in a completely remote setting and with the lack of face-to-face to solve problems. One of the teachers talked about I would just look over their shoulder in the past and we would solve this together. Well, you can't do that in that remote setting or within the West Clermont Online. So it's a little bit more of a process to get both students, family, and staff to kind of connect, or also to problem solve when things arise. And then that whole translation of brick and mortar procedures in a completely online environment as well, such as attendance or engagement, things like that we continue to work through. And one of the things that, frankly, if we had to do it all over again, we would have probably ordered earlier, but we wanted to be fiscally responsible and not over-order for workbooks and things. But the elementary workbooks are on a truck somewhere in Kansas, as my last tracking piece went, and hopefully here by Friday so we can get those distributed next week. That will solve a lot of printing issues that some of our parents are having and students are having at the elementary level. Another thing that's a challenge, and to be very transparent, is parents and families wanting to come into the online academy or leave the online academy. And it presents lots of challenges that we're trying to work through, and there's some very legitimate reasons why for those, but we built a staffing model on around 1,900 students, and to make sure that we're not either raising the capacity of our classrooms or with our online staff as well. So continue to work through those issues as they arise, and trying to come up with a process there. You'd be amazed at how many families were switching wanted that opportunity to switch. So, and then just I pride myself on returning email. It's volume right now, to be honest with you, and trying to solve things as quickly as you can and get it to the right hand so we can do that. So I talked more about the challenges, to be honest, but I think that's important that we are transparent, that we're learning, that we're trying our, quite honestly, working as hard as we can as a group solve things as they come up. We've gotten a lot of grace, to be honest with you, from our families as we continue to work through those challenges. But I don't want to minimize the success of standing up a new school as quickly as we did, so.
Is there a question?
Thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you so much.
It's not letting me turn anymore, Larry. Help me out, friend. I think it's just tired. While they're working on that, I'll go ahead and keep speaking about it. We have some new policies and procedures. This is more on the operational side of things that we are all learning to adjust to, but we think they're actually adding value to our schools. So first of all, there's the face coverings, which we know that's a critical element to stopping the spread. The attendance reporting, you'll see on the Wolfpack Hub there's a new attendance button so that parents can go on, instead of calling in, you fill out this form, and it gives us additional information that we need to be able to respond. And so that, parents are using that, and that's going very well. We also have the new feature, it's called Remind. It's a tool that if a student is not in school, their parents get text message. And we really did find during the spring COVID episode that people really are responsive to text messages, better than emails. And so we wanted to be able to expand that across the district. So first, we're just starting with these absences. And over time here, that will grow, and building principals will be using it, teachers will be able to use it, and it'll expand our communication across the district. We've had to alter our arrival and dismissal procedures. Our teachers worked really hard on coming up with a virtual open house, so there's a video link for every single staff member that introduces themselves, their content, their classroom skill, or their classroom environment, and welcomes them to the school year because of our limited visitors. It's sad to go to the games with such small crowds. It's just, it's very sad to miss the student section and all that comes with what sports seasons means in a high school and in a middle school. But we are thankful that we're able to keep them on the field and on the courts. And that's at 15% capacity with an emphasis on the families attending. So it is a great thing that we're able to expand with the virtual or the streaming of those events here in the next several weeks. Final Forms is also a new process that we are currently using at the high school and at the WCOA and with athletics. We've been doing that for years. And now we're going to be expanding that across the system. It's a very efficient tool to keep parents from having to do the same kinds of forms over and over and over. It gives us stronger, more complete data, and that will expand over time here this year. And finally, with what's new, if you haven't heard the news, through a waiver with the federal government, there will be free meals for all students through December. So I think that's a nice opportunity for all of our families. In communication, we are committed to keeping everybody up to speed. So clearly, the COVID communication and the three aspects of that I shared earlier is vitally important. But we continue as principals. They send out a weekly communication to their families. We are now moving to like a couple times a month as opposed to the more rigorous schedule we had. We know it can be very overwhelming for families, so we are working hard to simplify, to bolster our use of social media, and just try to make that two-way communication as effective as possible. Some of the considerations that we have here over the next couple of weeks are to do a formalized feedback. We've asked for feedback all along, from the spring till now, and we just want to give everybody a chance to kind of get into the routine and help us illuminate challenges that families are having so that we can do some problem solving. We want to be able to celebrate the successes that people are experiencing and just get some more formalized data, so we'll be doing that. As mentioned, the technology team they have moved mountains, and it's been incredible, their efforts to just make things happen. So that distribution process is well underway. Our entire teaching and learning team is focused on the professional learning days that are in October. They're going to be remote learning days for students, but our staff will be here engaging in collaboration with one another and just expanding their abilities to engage in a synchronous and asynchronous way. We are continuing to make the efforts of balancing academic focus as well as social emotional. I think it's easy for us to just skip over it and just get right into the grind of school. And it's important to pause and make sure we're checking in on each other, both the adults in the organization and definitely the children, as there's just still a lot of things that are just not normal in life. And everyone kind of deals with it in a different way. And so taking that time to be a good listener, to check in on kids and make sure that we are surrounding them with the supports they need is extremely important. And where we go from here is reimagining and revamping. What learning practices are we using right now that are serving our students really well? As Ellie had kind of alluded to, it's like we need to take what's the best of what's going on in a virtual way, what's the best of what's going on face-to-face, and we need to continue to align those things, to learn from both. And we're going to be saying goodbye to some old practices, hello to some new things, and what does that really look like? So how do we change our work habits? How do we change our learning habits? And how do we really best support this student learning, our student-centered learning model as the modern way of doing school at this stage? Finally, this is kind of my, not disclaimer, it's just there's been a lot of effort that's been put into the planning of school. A lot of our plans have worked extremely well. Some things have needed to be tweaked, and I think as flu season kicks in, as different things continue to evolve, we will continue to reflect on our plans, and we won't rest on our laurels and think we got it because we've got the first few weeks out of our way. We will continue to be vigilant in making sure that the health and safety of our students and our staff is of utmost importance. So I know you've been asking questions along the way, but is there anything specific that you would like to ask or comment on regards to our successful return to school? Okay, great. Well, let's move on then. And this is, in terms of slides, it's a long presentation, but I'm going to make it very brief by just hitting the key points. So this is the Centers of Excellence presentation that is really just meant to give you all a snapshot of what we're trying to do internally to lead our district to high performance. It's so easy, I know, for all organizations to get to a place where they're just surviving the urgent fire of the day. And we certainly have our urgent fires of the day, but we are committed as a leadership team to hold on to that vision that we have, to continue to think about our purpose beyond just getting the lights turned on and turned off every day as we've returned to school. And so the Centers of Excellence presentation, are you able to get it up? It's not coming up. Is designed really to take us back to our strategic plan, to look at our West Clermont roadmap for success, and get us to a place where we're supporting what we're trying to see in students. And so one of the first things that are included in here is our vision statement. Our vision is together as one community, we learn, lead, and succeed. Our mission is to commit to excellence with every learner, every day, every way. And what I want to hone in on there is that word excellence. If you're going to be an excellent organization, then you have to set conditions for excellence. And so that's what we want to talk about. When you look at the portrait of a graduate, that is, that slide right there, yeah. The portrait of the graduate slide is the skills and attributes that we were saying in our strategic planning process that are valuable for specific to West Clermont kiddos, that we want to ensure that they've had experiences all along their journey here in our school system, and to prepare them when they walk across that stage. And so although it's called Portrait of a Graduate, it sounds like something that happens way late in their career with us. It's more about Portrait of a Learner, what skills and attributes students need along the way. So we wrote academic and life preparation as a priority, communication and collaboration, character and integrity, innovation and creative thinking, and resiliency and adaptability. And so we have got to continue to merge not only the academic and the 21st century skills that are important, but these components also into our curriculum. And if you're going to do that well, then you can't be doing business as usual. And so that's why it's important that as a district, we have really looked at how we work as a team. And so that's why we're calling this the Centers of Excellence. And you can see there are 5 main components there: performance, cultural, experience, financial, and educational. And you'll see that the gray bar that's represented in that circle there is really the Board of Education. It's how you govern us. It's how you lead, how you set policy, and it kind of anchors us all as a system. And then we have moved to a chief officer model to determine exactly how the leaders all function together. So we're gonna go through these slides a little bit more quickly. You'll see first, the gray ring is you guys as the Board of Education. Then we have the Chief Executive Officer, that's my role as superintendent, and you can see there my support team that really reflects the entire cabinet, the entire executive team, as well as some support professionals. In the treasurer's role, serving as Chief Financial Officer, we have Dan Romano, clearly, and that is his team. And we wanted to make sure that the financial piece of the pie was absolutely included in this graphic, so that about how we all support each other, that we have a strategic vision, and we need to be setting a budget and aligning our funds to support that. Chief People Officer, CPO, Dr. David Foltz, and you see he has a support team and an outreach to our WCEA and HOPE. They have a very strong relationship, and it's very important to us that we stay in a two-way feedback loop with those folks. And there's some support team there, as David not only takes care of our staffing, but he also oversees enrollment in our district. Chief Operations Officer is Mike Overby, and he oversees our supports from business operations, technology, and student services. And as you know, this year with the West Clermont Online Academy, that's been a big job. In the support team, you see there that Mr. Perry, Director of Business Operations, has a team with child nutrition, as well as the maintenance custodial support team, as well as our support with OFCC and our building projects that he oversees. With our Director of Technology, you see that he shares an assistant with Mr. Perry, but has a team that he has been developing for a long time, and we've added a few members this year. With this being able to scale one-to-one across the district, we've just needed more hands, more skill sets added to the mix. And so he's working hard to really activate the strength of his veteran team, as well as bring new guys on board. Ellie with the Chief Learning Officer, this is probably the one that can be most confusing for teachers and our staff that work intimately with these teams. But we've broadened the Chief Learning Officer to be comprehensively in charge of curriculum and instruction, student services, as well as special education under one umbrella. And so this chart really just breaks down who reports to her and the team that she leads. And the whole goal there is to provide, instead of being isolationist in education, we want to integrate more. And so she's able to oversee and support the teaching and learning model from that. New on her team this year is a structure with PK through elementary, is led by Dr. Amy Storr. And she has a team of people that we haven't really added positions here. We've just we've converted some people, and we've looked at doing some dual responsibilities. But we've, instead of separating into the three silos of special education, curriculum, and student services, we've opted to focus on PK elementary in an integrated way, and then secondary in an integrated way. So Dr. Amy Storr heads the elementary team, and in the secondary team, Chuck LaFada, who joined us this year, he oversees special education and PK-12 student services. So some of those jobs were really, with student services, were in Mike Overby's responsibilities in the past, and we're in the process of shifting those over. And because we don't really have a full team in the secondary realm, we often dip into the building and activate assistant principals to kind of have dual roles. And so you'll see that Christy Otten isn't included in that, and we have our special education team on there. What I am very happy to be able to report is that Dr. Jessica West is coming over to not only lend her support in the middle school, which she's done very successfully for years, but she's going to be able to provide some strong leadership to the WCOA. So we're very thankful for her to be able to transition and kind of expand her influence here in our district. Finally, you'll see just in this, I wanted through the circle to really represent the collaboration that we wanted to have as a team, but there is some structure to it. So I report to the board. The team that reports to me is focused on educational excellence, performance excellence, and cultural excellence. And what's listed in the bottom are the gears. And the gears are kind of the, I guess, the newest part to this story. And that is, we want to be able to not be a top-down organization where just ideas are hatched at a district level and then just kind of disseminated among the group. We want to be able to continue to integrate. And so those gears represent teachers, they represent students, community members, PTO officers, our business partners. They are meant to represent the problems of the 21st century and education in the world are just too hairy, too audacious, and big to just wrangle by staying in an isolated education world. So we really want to continue to expand our networks, expand our connections across this community to ensure that our students' needs are met in a really comprehensive way. And so we'll be continuing to work through this integrated team of teams approach because we truly believe that together as one community, students can learn, lead, and succeed. But it takes all of us using our strengths and our talents. And we have to have an eye pointed toward excellence to ensure that our students are receiving the kind of learning and the kind of opportunities and experiences that they deserve, and that will turn them into the graduates that we dream them to be. So just wanted to bring that to you today as our emphasis this year will really to say, if we're going to have graduates that are going to be academically prepared, life prepared, they're going to have collaboration skills, they're going to be innovative, they're going to be resilient, then we have to look at what are our roles as adults. And so this is kind of a look at the district's district office team, and we're going to continue to explore this. What's this mean for the role of the principal? What does this mean for the role of the teacher? And we're going to make sure it's all lined up to support students successfully. And so those will be a big part of our efforts this year. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, 6.07 superintendent committees. I don't believe we have had any. I know we have several coming up that we are working to get scheduled. We have finance coming up, we have personnel, and can you remember any more, Dan? Okay, so those two are the ones coming up, and I'm sure there'll be more after that. And I don't have any further comments for tonight, item 6.0, so I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Franklin.
Perfect, thank you. Board business. Mr. Chumley, do you want to start us out?
I don't have anything to add to everything we've thrown into tonight, so.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Delaney.
Just continued thank you to the leadership team for your hard work and continued effort. Thank you to our teachers and to our students for doing what you're supposed to do every day and being together and having it be as normal as possible. I just know when I've been able to attend some of the recent events, it's been great to see the students doing what they do, and they really do miss it. So, you know, I know Mrs. Adams has said before that if we raise the bar for our students, they will strive to touch that bar, and our students have. They're wearing their masks, whether they like it or not, and they just want to be at school. So thank you to everybody for keeping us there.
Thank you. Mr. Shaw.
Excuse me. I just wanted to congratulate everyone, teachers, administrative, students, everyone on a great start to the school year. It's not the start we wanted, but it's a start nonetheless. It's better than how we ended last year, so. I did have a question, Mrs. Adams, regarding, I know we had some very significant additions to our team with like a couple of new principals and Mr. LaFata and how they're working out in their first, few weeks of
Yeah, I would say it's been
Worcester.
baptism by fire. They've hit the ground running. They've been incredible additions. I look forward to you guys getting to meet Mr. LaFata. He is certainly, with his experience in district administration as well as being a superintendent, it's just an invaluable asset that we've been able to acquire. And both our new principals in the elementary, we have Mrs. Slusher working at Merwin and Mr. Jones working at Willowville, and they have just been outstanding. They've been able to balance incredibly well, organizing and getting their school up and running and still working hard to develop the relationships that you need when you lead people. And so I think they've found an excellent balance, and I don't even know how they're finding it and doing so well so fast, but they are doing it, and we appreciate that. And we've also had Tiffany Brennan kind of wearing a new hat at the middle school to really bring that sixth grade experience to life. We know that is a critical transitional year, and that developmentally, they just need something different. And so she's been able to hone in on that and kind of share the responsibility with Mr. Hudson at the high school, that I think we're going to continue to see positive fruit come from that. So we think we have an excellent team, that we just, we keep getting better. And, you know, it is just a joy to have people that you not only enjoy working with, but that are willing to like roll up their sleeves and just continue to work and work and work. And our team has been incredible. And it really shows. And I think some of the team members are a little worn out right now. We kind of need a break. We need just like to pause for a minute. And yet we endure. And so I'm really proud. And I have to say, I have gotten tons and tons and tons of emails from staff who've just said thank you to me. I've never gotten this many thank yous, I don't think, in my career, of people just saying, we know there's been a lot going on in the district, thank you and your team. So just having that kind of encouragement from staff, whether it's classified staff or certified staff, it really means the world, because it shows that they know that we care about them, that they're watching, and they're noticing. And so as much as we don't need a parade or a banner or anything, just those emails mean the world. And I've gotten a ton of them since school, well, since the spring, but especially since school started. So it's greatly appreciated.
And then the staggered start, I assume, I know that was in the works before COVID came along, and I assume that was as successful as intended.
Yes, it was very successful. And in fact, people are saying, why don't we always do this? Why don't we expand it and just kind of bring sections of the population in? Because it really gave, because it's so silly. Like, this is just a kind of a minor example, but I was with a teacher or a principal at bus duty, and they were accessing not just the front door, they were accessing the side door and all over the school. And she looked at me and she's like, why have we never done it this way? Like, why do we try to cram all these kids from these buses through these two doors? And so it's the rethinking everything that you do that is bringing like really creative solutions, even something as minor as that, to the story. And it's just such a much peaceful like entry into the day. And that's kind of what the staggered start does. It just gives everybody like a minute to breathe without the hustle and bustle and like deer in the headlights kind of eyes, I guess. And so we got a lot of positive comments on that.
And Mr. Gephardt shared with me the positive repercussion of redirecting traffic in the building. As in between classes, it used to be a total chaos going both directions.
Yeah.
Having one direction going in the hallways
Yeah.
has caused so much more calmness
Yeah.
and organization, and he's like, we're gonna keep it.
Yeah, yeah. So, and
So-
there's tons of those that I could say, like
Yeah.
things that we were like, oh, we have to rethink. We thought it would be awkward, and it's like, oh, this is 10 times better. So
Absolutely.
we want to be able to keep that momentum of, creative ideas coming to the table and not doing things we've always done just because. So
Very good.
Anything
And, yeah, the teacher who was honored by Honored,
oh, yes.
Mrs.
Yeah,
Lemus.
we recognized her, Sandy Lemon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we recognized her last year, and so this just was like that. They had to slow down the release of that, and it finally got to come live.
that's what I thought that was, we talked about that
Yeah,
before.
yeah,
so.
she came to one of our meetings. We do have some other teachers, though, that have recently gotten some recognitions, and we'll bring them in here over probably in October.
Very good. And then I just wanted to, Mr. McCoy, I wanted to thank you for coming in and expressing your views and participating. And I know it's a touchy issue, but it's a welcome sight to have interaction again. And I appreciate you coming and expressing your comments. And thank you very much.
As
So,
well as your ongoing support of the district. We appreciate
Yes.
that. Thank you.
That's all I have.
My first thing is, after listening to Mr. McCoy, I realized that they're twofold. First thing is, Mr. McCoy, when you sent that in the summer, the administrators were all going crazy, trying to get everything ready for the beginning of school and those COVID policies and all that. Not an excuse, but a reason. But I think we need to come up with better means of communicating back when we receive communications from our public.
And that's a very good point. And to
Yeah.
be consistent with our message, we, the board, has never responded to the community, not because we don't want to, but because we don't operationally know all of the laws and the rules and all of that. That's what you guys are hired to do. But more importantly, if we did that, you might get 5 different answers from 5 different people, and they could all very well be wrong. So anytime we receive emails, regardless of what they are, we forward them to the proper people, and then they're responsible for, responding. If it's something of significant value, like needs to know now, one of us will pick up the phone and make sure that Natasha sees her email immediately. We don't want there to be a threat or any kind of child in danger or anything like that, that we're gonna just send an email and hope that somebody responds. We would absolutely pick up the phone and make sure that it's immediately addressed.
I really would like to apologize. We're sorry for that delay,
Absolutely.
and we'll work better to prevent that in the future.
If I can, and I totally understand, 100% you guys have done a lot to put this school year together, and I expressed that in an email, and I think I'm being pretty patient with everything.
And we appreciate that.
Everybody will tell you, I'm a WC supporter. I love the teachers. I think we have the #1 staff out of everybody. I wouldn't trade any of these educators for anybody.
Yep.
Every now and then, the school district gets a bruise, and you just you fix your bruise and you move on. And hopefully we can do that pretty quickly. But yeah, thank you, everybody. Natasha, you're doing a phenomenal job. You're not gonna get any complaints from this family. I thank everybody for what you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, we appreciate you.
She's a very, very hard worker. I get on her sometimes and Tarsha doesn't take any time for herself, because she has to be thinking about this in her sleep. The other thing is, I want to give kudos to the students. I have heard, first of all, I teach at Bethel. I was amazed the high school kids were conforming and doing what they were supposed to. My colleagues at the middle school and elementary said the same thing. I thought, wow, these are good kids. They're out in the country, blah, blah, blah. Ran into some of my West Clermont teacher friends who told me the same thing at all levels. So the kids have been great through the whole thing. Much better than we had planned on, in my opinion. So I'd like to thank all of them. And that's it.
I received a lot of positive comments as well. There's been a couple bruises, as you said, but overall, it's just been fantastic. So kudos to you and your support staff for making that happen. I'm very appreciative of our athletic department for boosting up or fast forwarding senior nights. Usually we wait till the end of the season. With the uncertainty of everything, I've appreciated that they've bumped everything up so that we have a senior night if things go crazy, that they're not missing out on important events such as that. An overwhelming tone has been, we don't like the rules at the high school stadium where you're limited on tickets and you have to wear a mask and everything, but that's quickly followed by the athletes saying, but we would rather have a season than not. So thank you for supporting that and making sure that the athletics happen. There's a lot of people that are appreciative of that. Anything further from the board? Nope. Okay. Our next meeting is on September the 28th. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Rudy, and a second. Mr. Chumley. Roll call.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mr. Chumley?
Yes.
Mrs. Brinkman?
Yes,
Mr. Schaff?
Yes.
Mrs. Delaney?
Yes,
5 yes.
thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you on the 28th.
Thank you, thank you.
thank you.
I have to wave now, since I waved online now.